money at some point stops giving you that inner feeling or in the depth of success, what really success really means. In the world, they always say, right, like the more money you make, the more happier you are. Fine, like money gives us that comfort, but does it really give happiness? I don't think so. Because if it did, then why wasn't I happy for 18 years, right? What I was looking for, I think what my soul was really longing for was that deep, unconditional love that didn't really come from outside. I realized that actually the love and peace that I was longing for outside was actually within me.
Well, Rashi, thank you very much for joining me on Success Matters podcast. When I read your profile, you talked about having created a 7-figure business but that wasn't fulfilling for you. So what was that business in, and what was that moment where you thought, okay, I've got these things of success, but actually I'm not feeling fulfilled?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you so much for answering that. And thanks for having me as well, Sanjay, here. The moment really, I think it's been a series of moments, a series of mini awakenings that I've gotten. I mean, I grew up in a family where my father had, he was successful, right? Like we had the success, and the money wasn't really a problem as such. So I grew up in a wealthy family, relatively, and I even built my own businesses to 7 figures. But money at some point stops giving you that inner feeling or in the depth of success, what really success really means. So I was always questioning that, like, I think as far as I remember. But in 2007, when I lost my dog, that was kind of like the moment of really asking, who am I? Why am I here? What is the purpose of life? What is God? Like all those deeper existential questions that I started asking. And that led me to a very long journey of kind of living with like this low-grade anxiety and depression. And I never really truly felt happy. And you know what? In the world, they always say, right, like the more money you make, the more happier you are. Fine, like money gives us that comfort. But does it really give happiness? I don't think so. Because if it did, then why wasn't I happy for 18 years, right? What I was looking for, I think what my soul was really longing for was that deep, unconditional love that didn't really come from outside. That, when I lost my pet in 2007, it's like I depended on him for love, right?
Right.
And it's like we always depend on others. That could be our parents, that could be our partners, even children. We depend on them for love. But actually, I lost another family member this year in June.
Mm-hmm.
And that really got me to a point where I was really sitting in silence with myself and really questioning everything really hard. Like I was very desperate. At this point, I was very desperate, even though it looked like I had achieved success, right? With a business that was doing well. I have a loving partner. I have loving kids. And I'm blessed. Like, I'm really grateful, by the way, not to say that I'm not, like, but that sense of inner desperation kind of grew more. And that got me to a point where I was like, I really needed to stop and just sit with myself, and really look inwards. And it was a defining moment for my life, for me, because for me, success really meant that I'm happy inside. That, for me, that is success, that I'm so happy that it's contagious, that I'm overflowing with it, and it's
Right.
flowing outwards to other people, and we're creating a better world. So in short, this is like my story, and this is, the topic of your podcast, as well as, success matters. For me, success, as I realized, is not really measured in the amount of money you have, or, and those things are fine. Like, we all need them. We all need money, right? To pay our bills, to get by, right? But it doesn't really bring us that deep sense of joy. And that can only come from getting in touch with yourself and finding that deep wealth of wisdom and love that lives deep within us, actually. That's what I discovered when I sat in stillness with myself. I realized that actually the love and peace that I was longing for outside was actually within me. And when I found that, when I was able to access that, I was really blown away because it was so close and yet it felt so far, right?
Hmm.
So that's pretty much what this is. This has been my journey.
Oh, wow. So, what was the nature of your business that you had?
So I've had multiple businesses. The first business I started was a brick and mortar company. So it was a coffee shop, actually. The first business I started with my sister and my family. And the second business I started was a health coaching business. Then the third business was I was a business coach. I was working with coaches and consultants to scale their business. And then I expanded that into a lead generation marketing company, which is what I have now too. I mean, I paused it up in June because I really wanted to see what my values are and where where I can infuse love and this joy and peace in the business itself. So we're back now. We're started the lead generation company again. But this path really interestingly led me to spiritual coaching, which is what I'm really passionate about. I have a few clients that I work with. It's very new. Um, but I wanted to take people to this place within them where they have all of the resources. They're fulfilled, they're content, and they're really happy with themselves because they're connected with their true self. And this
Right.
word true self is very fleeting. A lot of people think that I'm connected with my true self because I like ice cream, right? That's who I am. That's who I've been. But that's a preference, right? It's not really a true self. So the true self is that infinite consciousness that we actually are. And most people don't actually, at least I could speak for myself. I never accessed that part of me. I was only living from the 1%, which is the superficial layer of the mind. The rest of the mind, 99%, is actually silent. And we are even beyond that silence, the infinite being that we are. So that's where I take people to the source. And when they discover that, and then when they meet themselves for the very first time, it's like joy and bliss and ecstasy. Like there's a lot of, they're not even emotions, it's the state of who we are, the peace and love. That's who we actually are. So they're able to access these higher frequencies or higher states or consciousness.
Right. That's very, very deep indeed in terms of what you've just said there. Just kind of running it back slightly before we talk about the deeper consciousness. You talked about that unconditional love, and yeah, the thing with dogs, right, pets, is that they do give you that unconditional love, right? There's okay, maybe cats are a little bit like picky about how they give you love, but dogs definitely they
Yes.
there's no doubt about how they love you, right? It's just that they're there all the time and just constantly show that. So that moment was actually quite some time back, and so that journey you've been on since your dog passed to today, where you've now kind of started this spiritual coaching business. What what also happened in that moment, in that period, that kind of brought you to where you are now?
Yeah, yeah. They were intense. Those 18 years have been like, it's like, in some cultures, they say it's like the dark night of the soul. The soul goes through a very dark period, which is what I found myself. And it's not that I wasn't really working on myself. I was doing personal development. I was, doing all modalities. I was seeing a therapist. I was working with a coach. I had done healing modalities. I had taken, readings from psychics. I had been to spiritual retreats. Everything was there, but everything that I was doing was a pursuit of happiness. There's also a movie, Pursuit of Happiness, right? I was pursuing happiness in the outer world. And it just left me feeling more desperate, right? It just left me feeling like there's no end to this personal development. But what we are developing is the ego. The
Hmm.
soul doesn't need any personal development. There's no real evolution as such. It's just when we see our true nature, we are free. We are already content. We are already perfect. We're already enough. And that's the switch. It's seeing who we truly are, not who we think we are, but who we truly are. But those 18 years and even before that, I thought that I was somebody, we have these little identities that I
Yes.
am an entrepreneur and that get identified with that. And then I became, a wife. I got identified with that, Then before that, I'm a daughter. I got identified with that. So it's like then a mom, and then entrepreneur again. So those identities really hurt us, because then we're not really leading from a true self. We are leading from an identity, an idea. An identity means an idea of who we think we are, very different to who we actually are, right? So those 18 years I was living as an idea of who I thought I was: the mom, the wife, the partner, the lover, the entrepreneur, the daughter. And I just became more and more desperate to seek that truth, And when I found that, when I found who I truly am, now there's no more pursuit of happiness. I'm happy. I'm joyful, right? Like this, it's the end of it.
Yeah.
So,
What you said about identities is so true. I mean, we all carry multiple identities, and oftentimes when you read a newspaper article about something, they'll put some sort of identity: homeowner, driver, I don't know, sports coach, whatever. There's always,
yeah.
we seem to, as humans, need to put an identity or a label on someone. And then oftentimes we carry that label ourselves as well, even if it's not really our label. It's just being put on us, and we just carry it. So how do you strip away? What is it that you do to help people, and what did you do to strip away those labels to truly become your true self?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Actually, firstly, I want to clarify that the reason we put labels and we identify is because we want to belong, right? There's a very core human need to belong. There's this, we want to belong, and we want to, it's just a survival brain. We just did better when we belonged, right, into a community. That's how our brain has grown. So there's no judgment here. I want to come from a deep compassion and empathy, because we just don't know better, right? The way I disengage from identities is this process. That's actually, there is some identity to something where we are suffering, and the suffering is the clue. The
Right.
suffering itself is a clue. So, for example, when an entrepreneur, wants to make money, right, and does not make money, they suffer, right? So the suffering itself is the clue back home. So what I do in my work is we find out which areas of their lives they're suffering in the most. That could be the most prominent areas. What I've discovered with my clients so far is either it's relationships, which is primary, or it's business, right? These are the two key areas where the suffering is the heaviest, because there's too much attachment there. Too much attachment, too much ego, too much identity. Is I'm a somebody, and I'm pursuing something. And when we are not able to get that desire, there's too much attachment to the desire. That's when the suffering is at the most. So we track back, we see where the suffering is, and then we see what the identity is, the attachment to that. There's also a deeper process to this, Sanjay, which is we identified what shadows are. If you've studied Carl Jung, Dr. Carl Jung, he was, and even there's Dr. DeMartini. They both have done heavily. Their whole work is about shadow work. Uncovering our shadows, which is the hidden and suppressed parts of our being, which are not acknowledged yet, which have not been brought to the light of awareness, right? Which is the parts of ourselves which we don't really like. And actually, these are the parts of, we judge these things in other people. That's little cue is something like greed or anger, like you shouldn't be angry, you shouldn't be jealous, you shouldn't be. So watch out, like what we need to watch out. Our narrative is the vocabulary. You shouldn't be doing that. That means that's the part we hadn't really looked in ourselves or embraced the human side of our thing, right? So a lot of this, the work that I do is integrating the shadows, so that when we integrate the shadows, we become whole again, right? That's the deep work. And then, of course, we look at the identity where there's too much identity and attachment. So we break that attachment. But also before that, I take them to the place of where they finally see who they are. That's stripping away of the layers of the mind and body and emotions and the whole baggage that we're carrying, right? So we strip away that, and we go back to a place where they're not, I am this or I am that. They're just, I am.
Right.
Just I am. And this pure state of awareness, just when, I mean, if I can invite you, Sanjay, and if you just I mean, you can even do it with me, like even the audience who's hearing or tuning in. If you just say to yourself, I am, not I am this or I am that, but just I am, you'll you'll recognize that you're just aware. That's it,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
This pure state of awareness, just neutral nothingness, just I am. But it's if we go deeper into this I am, we'll see that actually it's not really nothing or neutral. It's infinite. This
Right.
space that we are able to access is actually infinite. And everything else, the identities, the shadows, everything, the whole world, appears and disappears within the space, this infinite space that we are.
Mm-hmm.
So who are we actually? Right? That question is so deep. Who am I? And that question is so profound that if we can discover the answer to that, who am I, then our whole life is transformed. We think we're this little human being with this tiny body that dies, right? Like that's what we think of ourselves, that we were born and then we're going to die. And that's pretty much it. We live the life, we accumulate money, and then we go. But that's not the truth, though. That's not even who we are. Is we are infinite source, and even the body, the identity, everything is appearing and disappearing within who we are. We are that. We never die. We were never born in reality. No, I'm talking about the absolute truth, right? I'm not talking about the body. The body dies. There's a process that the body leaves. And in our Indian culture, always say, oh, they passed away. I mean, most cultures, they say they passed away. They never say, um, it's not like death is always acknowledged. They always say the soul passed away, right?
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
obviously we,
God
we
rest
still
your soul,
understand.
or the words like that, right? Because there's always that other element. There's not, that's it, stopped. You know, you stopped, and that was it. Yeah. I think this acknowledgement of there being a soul or a spirit or a higher being, if you like, that I think, yes, lots of cultures have that. And what you're saying here is something, yeah, similar to, well, it's based, a lot of Eastern philosophies are based on this kind of concept, right? Of the soul and the body being two separate beings, really. The soul is just occupying the body, and our souls are all interconnected with a higher soul and a higher purpose. And so that's kind of very deep. You talked about this high frequency as well. So what do you mean by a higher frequency?
Yeah, that's it. So, the frequency is mostly that it's a fad word for energy. It's how we're vibrating, a vibration, right? So as you could see, as we're talking, we're already vibrating at a higher frequency. So if you imagine lower frequencies or low vibrations, that's like more anger, right? Jealousy and sadness. Like those are kind of lower frequencies where the energy kind of goes down, right? Where our
Hmm.
body posture is like this, and it's a lower frequency. Straight away, we know that we're not feeling that good. Higher frequencies, high vibrations, we're feeling happy, we're feeling joyful, we're feeling ecstatic, love, right? Love, happiness, peace. Those are all higher frequencies or higher vibrations. And as human beings, we have this innate tendency to avoid pain and to gain pleasure, right? That's just how, all species actually, we don't want pain and we want more pleasure. That's how it
Yeah.
is, right? That's what the brain wants. So, yeah, in a nutshell, higher frequencies really mean living from your highest frequency or vibration, really means living from a place of total love and peace and joy and happiness and ecstasy and bliss. Those are the higher frequencies. And
Right. Okay.
courage comes in the middle line. Courage is actually what takes us past the fear. Fear, anger they're all lower frequencies, right? Where our energy dips and we kind of curl, even our body posture, it's like contraction, right? And then there's courage where we actually take a leap of faith or even courage to go to, or even aspire to go to higher frequencies. And by the way, a lot of people switch from, it's not like most humans live both frequencies, right? And it's not always that black and white. Like most human beings, at least I know for myself, when I talk about those 18 years, it's not like wasn't even, there were moments of where I was happy too,
Hmm.
whereas at my wedding or when my kids were born, like those were moments of profound joy and happiness, but they didn't really last. They
Yeah.
were lasting, they were fleeting. So the invitation here and what my work is to actually live from your being, the human being side of the presence or the awareness. Because from that state, we are always happy, but we're not looking for outer circumstances to make us happy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So, you've already touched on this in terms of success. How will you maintain this higher frequency? I mean, that's what is your success now, right? Is
Yes.
being in this higher
Yes.
frequency. So, how will you maintain it? How do you have the people around you maintain it? Because they can have their low highs as well. And how do we create this ripple effect around the world that everyone is in a high frequency?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful question. So, Sanjay, every time it's an intentional practice. Like we have everything is a practice, right? It's not like it's not a sudden enlightenment. We always hear about teachers who were just suddenly they wake up and they're enlightened. Like Eckhart Tolle, for example, beautiful example of that, or Osho, or there have been some sages that just wake up and they're enlightened, right? But for most of us, that process is a kind of like a slow burn process, right? But we can be intentional about it. So what I do, one of the practices is that in the morning, just before you're fully aware, fully conscious, you're in between states of waking up and fully awake. This in between waking up state, between the waking and the fully awake, there's a state where we just have to say to ourselves, I am, and bring ourselves back to that state of observer, because that is our true place, the state of I am. Because when the baby is born, right? When the baby is just out of the womb, there's no I am this, or, she doesn't even know
Yeah.
her name, right? Like it's just pure I am, right? I am, or I'm aware. That's pretty much what this is. So the invitation is before you start your day, before the mind takes over, because otherwise it's an autopilot journey. We wake up, we have things to do, we go, go, go. The whole life is just gone. So we have to be intentional every morning. We wake up and even if for 5 minutes, I am, we take our true position. Ah, right, I am. And
Hmm.
now we're in the state of witness. We're now letting our life unfold in front of us. We're being the witness of our own life. So now we have a higher position. We're able to see our life unfold from a bird eye view almost. We're not we're not so much in it, even though we're in it, but we're able to still see it from a bird eye view. Now that brings us on sense of non-attachment. And to live from a place of non-attachment is to live from higher frequencies, because attachment is the root cause of suffering. Either attachment or resistance. There's two things. So either we're right, either we're too attached to the desires that we want, or we are resisting life or resisting pain. So observe yourself in both the forms. And it's not an easy process in the beginning. It takes some time to kind of master this process of being the witness. When we have done it for a few days, now there's a new neural pathway being formed in the brain. Like there's a previous, they call it the separate self or the ego,
Hmm.
or, the survival brain. Let's just say that. So the survival brain has a specific neurological path, the neural pathway that's formed in the brain, right? And we're just operating from that. We're on autopilot. Most of the times we're living as a separate self. So you're separate, I'm separate. We're, separate entities. But when we start to stay and abide as the witness, what happens is we start to see the oneness in everything and everyone. And when we are able to see the oneness in everything and everyone, we are already operating from love. We would never think of hurting anyone. We would never think of being resentful or, of being vengeful or avenge anything, right? Like there's no hate. So we can eliminate wars. We will eliminate, you know, all of the adversity, because we're operating from that state of witness. We're letting our lives unfold. And that's what, if people were tuning in, if they've read the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the ancient scriptures of of India, actually, where I come from. And, that's where Sri Krishna actually, wrote about this, that being the witness and, not getting so attached and caught up in our own life. We're too close to it. So when things are not going fine, we think it's happening to us, right? But when we are the witness, we are now above our own life and we're watching it unfold. So we're not too entangled in. And then now we don't suffer as much as we used to suffer before. And then slowly, slowly that suffering is gone. And we're just at peace. We're happy.
Yeah. Okay. And so, I mean, this is very, very deep and a fascinating conversation. Um, I'm just going to take it back a little bit to your businesses, because I have a tradition of asking a question ask a previous guest to ask a question for my next guest. And my last guest asked a question, which I think you'll relate to. She asked, what piece of common business advice do you completely reject? So having been someone who was in business, having coached business people, what's a piece of business advice that now you would just completely reject?
That I would reject.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Well, let me think about this. A
Yeah.
piece of business advice that I would completely reject. Yeah. It's like, hmm, I have mixed feelings about this because, like the the things that we have done in our business, they happen, but they're not really like a failure. Like it's all feedback. It's all learning, right? We make
Mm-hmm.
mistakes, but they're always like a learning process. Um, okay, yeah, sure. I would say the piece of advice that I used to give before and now I don't. Is that what it
Right.
is, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Okay.
it could be that, or piece of advice you had that now you think, hang on, that was rubbish advice. I wish I hadn't listened to that. Or yeah, what seems to be a common mantra amongst business folk, but actually isn't the reality. Any of those?
I would say, I mean, I never used to give this advice, but I've heard it really commonly in the marketers, and I have a lead generation company myself, and I was actually listening to this video at this time that you should exaggerate your results, that just to get attention in content, you talk about anything. Exaggerate. Like, so for example, if you made 50K, you can say 500K. And I'm like, wait, that's lies, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, the marketing world actually propagates this. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that that's wrong,
Yeah.
so I wouldn't really. And by the way, I'm not naming anyone, but these are marketers that are very well known in the industry. And that was the advice that was coming from, that it's okay to fake numbers. It's okay to, exaggerate the results of your clients. But the tradition that I come from, and, the culture that I am raised, that's a lie. That's dishonesty. That's how I see it, So as a marketer, I would never do that. I
Yeah.
completely reject this advice.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, that
Yeah,
that makes sense, especially within the space you're operating in now as well, right? The more spiritual sort of space. You absolutely do want to be true to your true self, and
exactly.
not to
Exactly.
another.
And truth is liberating. Sure, you can you can make a few bucks by is exaggerating. That's what we have this, we're living in the world where social media is the king, right? Content is king. And content has such a great value. That's why we're here, right? But then that doesn't mean that we just say anything. I mean, we cannot be dishonest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like to get the attention of someone.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel ethical to me,
Yes. I
right?
often get, well, yeah, for Success Matters podcast, I often get emails from people saying, I'll grow your listenership by 10,000 or whatever. And what are they doing? They're just using bots, right? They're just going to put bots out there, have the video play, banks of mobile phones. I don't want that. I want truly genuine, organic growth from people who really want to engage it with, conversations like the one we're having today, and,
Yeah.
take something from that.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I agree. Yeah.
Mm. Do you have a question for my next guest?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this would be like I mean, if I were to ask them, you know, how do they connect with their true self and how do they bring that into business? That would be a great question. So how do they connect with their true self and how do they bring that truth into the business?
Right. Okay.
That would be amazing. If
Yeah.
if we can answer that, yeah, that would be great.
That's such a difficult
It
question.
is
As
a
you asked that
difficult question.
question, I was just kind of pausing there for a moment and thinking about people that I know who are spiritual and also have their businesses or their careers, but they often have to kind of separate the two, if that makes sense, right? So there's like your persona or identity in your business world or your career, and then there's your persona or identity in the or truer self of you. So how do you bridge that? That's a really good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. How do you bridge those two? That
Yeah.
would be,
Do you have
yeah.
any insights into how you bridge those?
Well, I'm actually operating both businesses at this stage. One of the businesses that gets me my bread and butter, right? Which is the
Mm-hmm.
lead generation marketing. The other one's very close to my heart, which is spiritual coaching, which is the path that I've been put on. So how do you bridge that? I don't bridge them. I have them separate but I don't carry an identity as such. I'll tell you something very, very honest. Before we would take on any client, right? Like we would accept any client. We just wanted to have more clients. So we would
Mm-hmm.
accept anyone. And not necessarily we were able to give results to those clients. There are some niches that are difficult to generate leads for, you know? And now, ever since I have connected with my true self and truth, I'm bringing this honesty into my business. So, which
Right.
means that even if I work less, I take less clients every month, and my team knows it very well that we are not after number, we are about the quality of results delivered. So, let's say we take 2 clients a month, we want to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that we give results. So, this truth element is this honesty and this higher love for people is kind of coming in through both of my businesses.
Right.
Now, before it was like a commodity, right? Like, oh, we'll just take anyone, we'll get it.
Mm.
And it was not good. It's not good for them. It's not good for me. I had to refund a lot of clients. So
Right.
I learned my lesson. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, learning your lesson the hard way, and being true to yourself. One of the, just again going back to some experience that I had from my own coaching of people, is oftentimes back to that identity of themselves. If what they're doing isn't in line with their identity of themselves, then that leads to stress, that leads to problems, that leads to behaviors that maybe don't give the right outcomes for them. So being true to your true self
Yeah,
is really that's the most fundamental part of what we are.
exactly. So true. So true.
Yeah. So it's been a fascinating conversation. We're at the top of our time now, unfortunately. If people want to find out more about what we've spoken about today, if they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, so they can find me on my website, which is www.rashinayarwellness.com.
RashiNayarWellness.com. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you. Well, Rashi, thank you very much for joining me on Success Matters podcast. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you for having me, Sander.
To find your success, contact me at info@successmatterscoaching.com. That's info@successmatterscoaching.com.